Welcome to Mission Ready Society. I'm your host, Orrin Price, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing the basic steps into creating a fire in a winter environment. I'm also going to be demonstrating how to make a Dakota fire, which if you don't know, is to conceal your fire in case you are being tracked or hunted down by some sort of enemy. This is going to be part of a larger series that I'm going to be calling the Winter Warrior series, which is going to demonstrate and show different survival principles and different combat principles within a winter environment. It's about 14 degrees today, so it's a little chilly, so let's get this fire going. All right, so the first step when creating a fire in any environment is going to be to gather materials. So we're going to want to find a coarse tinder, a little bit bigger of a tinder to kind of get our fire started, and then we're obviously going to want larger sources of fuel to keep that fire going. So I have a little saw here, a little collapsible foldable saw. If you don't have one of these, of course, you can just break off branches, but this will make life a little bit easier for those bigger branches. But right now, what we're going to do is kind of just, scout out here and find some materials, and we're going to collect them and bring them back to the area that we're going to be building our fire in. So first thing that I have noticed in this area, and if you're in a similar environment, you probably also have, is birch trees. We have one here, and there's also another birch tree here. And if you don't know about birch trees, the bark on this, which you can see is peeling off here, is very flammable. So it is a great source of tinder when getting your fire going. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to peel off some of this bark. I'm going to collect it. I'm going to bring it back to our fire building location. All right, now that we have gathered our birch bark, we are going to find a little bit bigger items to get our fire going here. And great place to start is if you are in an area like I am with evergreens or pine trees. These low branches on them are usually dead and are great. You can find some smaller stuff like down here. These branches are usually pretty dead, so you can just, snap them off like that. And these act as a great source to fuel that fire a little bit more and, really get it ripping. So now I'm just going to take these small dead branches, and of course, within this video, we're not doing anything here that's going to harm the trees. These branches are dead, and peeling birch bark off of trees is not going to harm it. So, we're not taking anything that is alive. We are only taking, the dead portions of the trees, which will not harm it. So so now I'm just going to gather these small pine branches that we're going to use as our little bit bigger fuel here. All right, so another item that I have found out here is these plants. I'm not exactly sure on the name. If you know what they are, let me know down in the comments. But what they have here is these little fine flowers, that you can kind of see in the ends here, and this will act great as a fine tinder source to get our fires going. And the leaves on here will also be very helpful. So we're just going to take a few of these that we can use to get our fire ripping. And there's some of these down here as well. So anything, if you can find something that has, very fine and coarse, like flowers on it, or fuzz, we'll say, this acts great as a ignition source for your fire. Okay, so next we are going to gather slightly larger branches that we're going to use as kind of our sustainment fuel that'll, burn a little bit longer. So we're going to find branches that are, a little bit bigger around, about half an inch to maybe an inch around. You're not going to want to go anything too much larger than that. So actually right next to where we're building our fire, we got some dead branches right here that would be perfect. So I'm just going to take these and kind of pile them up. So yeah, I'm just going to go around and kind of gather some of these larger branches. Now, of course, if you're being tracked down or hunted by somebody or something, of course you're not going to be wanting to go around snapping all these branches because it makes a lot of noise. So that's where a folding saw like this comes in handy, because it's a little bit quieter. So what we can do is, we find a branch that we want, we can just quietly saw away at this. Obviously it makes a little bit of noise, but it's a lot quieter than snapping a branch would be per se. Oops, fold it out of me. So yeah, this is a good investment to have, and it makes your life just a little bit easier. All right, so now that we have gathered our materials, it is now time to build our Dakota fire. So I have moved to a different location slightly, and the reason being is because I wanted somewhere with a little bit more concealment, because with a Dakota fire, if you're being tracked or hunted down by some sort of enemy, something with a little bit more cover and vegetation is going to help disperse that smoke that is going to be released a little bit. So what we're going to do to build our Dakota fire is we're first going to make our main pit area. So we're going to want this to be about 10 to 12 inches around, and we're going to want to try and make it about 12 inches deep. So we're just going to take this snow here and we're going to dig it down, forming our main pit and circle here. Now, when you're digging your hole, what you're going to want to be careful of is these roots that you're going to find in the ground, most likely, because when you light your fire, what can happen is these roots can also catch and kind of smolder, and that fire can travel up the roots and spark up a fire somewhere else, and obviously we don't want that to happen. Also, when removing your dirt here, it's best to just kind of place it to the side. That way, if you need to, cover this up in a hurry, you can do so. And what's even better is if you have a tarp to place your, dirt and snow that you have dug out of your hole into that tarp. I got to build up this side just a little bit here because it's a little bit lower, but we're almost there. All right, so now that we've dug our main hole, This isn't like completely 12 inches, but it's fairly close and it'll work for today's purposes. So now what you're going to want to do is dig a smaller hole in the direction of facing the wind, preferably. That way the oxygen from the wind will come through that hole and help, you know, feed and burn that fire up. So we're going to take our stick here, and the wind is coming over from this direction. Let me just take this branch down. We're going to dig a little hole over here, and you're going to want it to be about you know, six inches or so. Apologies. You're gonna want to make this about 6 inches or so. It's gonna want to be smaller than your primary hole. So we're just gonna dig this down, and it's going to connect into our primary pit here at the bottom, and that's what's going to help fuel that oxygen into the fire. So we're just going to dig this down and connect the two. All right, and there we have it. Sorry, I kind of flung this material here a little bit, but here we have our smaller hole dug and connected to our larger pit. Now comes the fun part of building our fire and getting it going. Now, the only thing about when building a Dakota fire pit is that it obviously disturbs up the area a little bit. So in the winter, that's, you know, a negative side of doing this. But of course, in the winter it's cold, you kind of need a fire, so you know, sometimes you don't really have a choice. But yes, it disturbs up the area, and it takes a little bit of time compared to, you know, just building a normal fire and getting that going. But now we're going to take our materials that we have gathered earlier, our tinder, and we're going to build out our fire. All right, now I've switched over to the action camera view. That way you guys can kind of see what's going on in a little bit of a first person view. So as you can see, we have our smaller hole here, our little bit deeper pit, and this is where the hole connects in. I probably could have dug this down just a little bit more to, you know, get it more towards the bottom here. But now we are going to build our fire up. For today, I'm going to be using a ferro rod to get our fire going here. So we have our striker and our actual ferro rod. This one I'm going to be using today. Of course, if you have a go bag of some sorts, it's always good to carry a lighter of some sorts, such as a Bic lighter, because, you know, that is instant fire and makes this process way easier. We're going to be using just materials that we found today, but also within that go bag or pack that you're carrying, what's also a good idea is to, you know, carry some sort of fine tinder source instead of having to find your own. And that could be something such as cotton balls or dryer lint. Both of those work great, and, you know, just make that process a little bit easier. But for today, we are going to be using what we have found. So I'm going to take first our birch bark. Now, you don't need a ton of this, and what I will also mention with birch bark is that it gives off a little bit of smoke, so, you know, just keep that in mind. I mean, obviously everything here gives off smoke, but this stuff can give off a little bit of black smoke as well. Now, what I like to do is I like to take those really finer, like very papery pieces, and, you know, I kind of just crumple it up in my hands a little bit to make it a little bit finer. That way it catches just all that much easier. And now we're going to kind of stick that down there in the bottom. And we're going to take a little bit of this plant that we have found, and we're going to stick that down there as well. And these are going to act as our, you know, finer sources of fuel to help get that fire, you know, that initial spark and flame going. So we're just going to kind of build ourselves a little bit of a nest almost down here. And that's what we're going to use to get this going. Now we're going to take our ferro rod and hopefully we can get this within our first few strikes, but we'll see how it goes. Now what I like to do sometimes is shave a little bit of this off without sparking it on accident, and this will kind of just, you know, give a little bit of material or magnesium, but you know, just a little bit extra down there to help it get going. So now took a little bit longer than I would have liked, but we got it going. And you know, that might also be partially because of the materials that we are using to get it going. They might not have been super fine enough to, you know, really get it on that first few strikes, but we got it going nevertheless, and that is what is important here. So as you can see, like I said, that birch bark gives off a little bit of black smoke, but we're just gonna, you know, help fuel that fire now with our other tinder sources that we have here. Just slowly building it up, bigger to bigger sources of fuel, really getting that fire going nice and warm here. We're just gonna gradually build it up slowly but surely, without obviously smothering the fire, because then that's going to, you know, put it out. And that's the last thing we want to do, is put out our fire that we just spent all of our hard time getting going here. So we're just gonna slowly build this, slowly but surely here. Again, making sure to build it up to really get that, you know, those larger branches burning here and getting that going. Well, there you have it. We have successfully built a Dakota fire pit, and now you can boil water if you need to, keep yourself nice and warm, dry out gear, whatever it may be that you need to use the fire for. But we got it going. It's going pretty nice now. Obviously, you're just wanting to keep fueling that fire, keeping it going. But there we are. It's nice and warm, obviously. But yeah, we have successfully built a Dakota fire pit. Now, once your fire is out, obviously you can, you know, if you need to leave, you can kind of sprinkle some snow on it here to put it out. But just make sure that all of those hot coals are kind of out down here. Obviously, the reason we built this is if we're being tracked down or hunted by some sort of enemy. So now what we can do to cover it back up is we can take our material that we set aside and we can just fill this hole back in here and kind of, you know, make it as if we were never here to the best of our abilities. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect, and in the winter, obviously, this is going to be a lot more difficult because you will have left a bunch of tracks behind as well. So, I'm not going to be perfect, but obviously, you know, in the summer or whenever there is no snow on the ground, this is a lot easier to cover back up. But we can just, there you go, kind of just cover it all back up and kind of disperse it around, cover it up with some fresh snow maybe, cover up that dirt that's been turned. And now, there you go, it's gone. And just like that, our Dakota fire has been disguised or has vanished. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you gained some new knowledge or brushed up on some old skills. I hope that you were able to, kind of understand how a Dakota fire works and how to build one. Obviously this takes a little bit of practice and, some time to really get it down and, build a successful and really good Dakota fire pit. It's also going to depend on what kind of environment that you're in and, how much time you have. But, this is just kind of a demonstration to show you the basics of building a Dakota fire and, the basics of building a fire within a winter environment. Obviously, it wasn't perfect. I would have liked to dig the hole a little bit deeper, but that's a little hard without, having a shovel with me today. So digging that hole with a stick, it's a little bit more difficult, especially with the ground being frozen. So again, I hope that you learned something new maybe, or you had a nice refresher. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.